As you embark on this sacred quest of self-discovery and expression, remember that you are not alone. Here, amidst the canvas and clay, you will find a community of kindred spirits, a family bound by a shared love for art and a relentless pursuit of excellence. Welcome to the Masters of Art program, where dreams take flight and masterpieces are born.
Hi everybody, I'm Patrick Rogers. If I haven't met you before, I'm the art gallery director for Monticello, as Joanne said, and a major friend of the Pottstown Area Artists Guild. I'm just always thrilled to work with you all on programs. Thrilled to see everybody here tonight to support this Masters of Art talk and to support the Guild, which I hope you all continue to do by going to exhibits, coming to programs like this, checking out their online offerings, and becoming members. So always happy to support you all. And very eager to hear this talk by Carolyn Kearney, and who is a fellow gallerist like me, and has just some amazing tips to share with you all. So very excited to be here, and thank you. Thanks for all coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So welcome tonight. I think we have a fascinating speaker. I've seen a presentation on the aspects of art and business. So I'd like her to introduce Caroline.
Caroline, let the song speak, Caroline.
Kearney. She's a Pauline Arts over in New Jersey.
Right across from Philly.
And I was going to tell you all her background. That's the first part of her talk, so I'm going to be quiet.
Thank you. I'll try to keep the about me short. So. Thanks so much, Don. Oh, sorry. I want to start by thanking Joanne for inviting me, and Don and Patrick for helping us get all set up, and it's really lovely to be here. Oh, it's right here on the desktop. Come on, Karen. You'll have to excuse me, guys. I'm hardcore Apple, so don't worry, I'll talk into it in a second. Oh, yeah, because the camera's probably blocking. All right, so I gave you guys all a copy of the slides, but I want to caveat that there's a lot of slides. One of the aspects of the practice, the art space that we run, is that we want artists to feel like they have agency in what they do. So we have given recently several boot camp classes, and so I included some of those slides because they're quick do's and don'ts that we can talk about more in detail, but like I just wanted to give you guys something that you could take with you, and then hopefully you guys will send out the presentation afterwards. So give me 1 second to get this up. I used to do this professionally. I can't believe I'm so bad at PowerPoint now. All right, we did it. Okay, so I want to start, before we even talk about me, any of that, tell me what you think the current art world is. I want to leave it abstract because I want to know, I want to level set about what your experience is. Anyone feeling brave? No one? So, go ahead.
It's a mix of old and new, meaning there's still retail spaces out there, there's still wholesale market, but that there's also a lot of new venues that are very pick and choose and very specific to what they're selling.
100% agreed. And we're going to talk about why I think that happened and why, like, generally we talk about, when I say I, it's a stand-in for the artists that show with us and my mother, who is also a curator and a fine artist, and what we think kind of why that has happened. Anybody else want to share an experience? It's oversaturated, 100% true. Anyone else want to share something?
It's on social media.
It's on social media, and we're going to talk about, I have a very specific view of social media and its function that I think might be more surprising than you guys think it is, because it's not about sales, it's about the parasocial relationship. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end, and cross-germinating things. So does anybody want to add anything else about what they think the current art world is? All right. So I actually forgot my About Me page. So I'm pretty loud, so I don't usually talk into mics. My name, obviously, is Kearney. My background is that I am actually a classically trained singer. I did that for years. I did cabaret in New York. I interned at the Kennedy Center doing arts management. I worked for a photographer where it was my job to do all of the business and the advertising of her art. But the most formative experience that I've had, and I'm not going to belabor this, is I'm one of 3 girls and my mom is an artist. She's been an artist my whole life, profoundly talented, doesn't think so herself because we all have that little critic in us that tells us, am I doing this right? And she is just the same. But it's given me a very unique perspective because I have been visiting galleries in Soho since I was very small. I remember during the 1992, I think it was government shutdown, we went to the Hirshhorn for the first time and we were afraid it wasn't going to be open. And it's been a really interesting thing for me because I am not an artist. I'm creative, but I'm not a fine artist. But the thing is that I deeply empathize with artists, and I've been living in this art market for a very long time. And one of the things that I see from my perspective, and that my mom and I make integral to our practice, is that there was a thing that happened through commodification, through the galleries, where artists became product lines. And the product lines had certain schools that fed in, certain galleries that fed in, and they all led up to this goal at the top. If you're not on one of these product lines, how do you get to here? And so for years, that was what, when I was doing shows with my mom and curating them and helping her with her social media and all those things, what we focused on. And then we went and we're getting studio space we were going to share studio space, and every space had a beautiful gallery. And it changed the way that we looked at the art world that we were experiencing in real time. Because our theory of the case is that blue chip galleries and commercial galleries and local art institutions and state grants and all of those things are all part of a healthy community. But largely, a lot of galleries we're taught to aim for this collector up here, which is great. Everybody wants the collector. But down here, in this triangle that we're not looking at, are all of these people who could be everyday collectors and find meaning and value in art. So what we decided when we just bit the bullet and went and opened our gallery was we wanted to do 2 different things at once. We wanted to empower artists to have agency in their own careers by demystifying what we see as kind of people don't want to tell you about pricing, people don't want to tell you about jurying, but I think that if you knew how nuanced jurying is and what a flip of the coin it was, people would take rejection a lot less personally. And so we wanted to do that, and we also wanted to give artists tools to represent themselves in the world and feel comfortable. But then there was another larger part of that. Oh, don't tell anyone I did that. There was a much larger part of us that wanted to, everyone knows an artist. You guys obviously all know artists because you are them. And whether you're in fine craft or fine art, there's really no distinction in modern art. So one of the things that we wanted to do is artists are cool. Like, they have these really earthy and interesting conversations. The stuff that they do with their artwork is nuts, and it deserves to be celebrated. And so one of the things that I got to do, and my sisters, who are very different from me, one's a CFO and one's a physical therapist, we love art. We love that we have space, and part of it is that we feel like we know artists, we have agency, and we get to talk about it, and these concepts bring meaning to our lives. So we wanted to give both the viewer and the artist a place where they could make community. So that is the long and short of me, and mostly I feel most comfortable talking about my gallery space. And before I did that, I did do, probably for at least 15, as early as like 2008, I was helping my mom with curating and making materials and things. So, does anyone have any questions so far? All right. All right, so I talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to give like a really short rundown of the ways in which art came into the world. Like, I'm not going to go all the way back to cave paintings, but obviously they show that we always need a visual medium to express ourselves. But museums actually originated as private collections, and I did not know this until like a week ago. Did anybody know that the first museum was actually the Museum of Alexandria, which they think was annexed to the Library of Alexandria, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world, which means that collecting art goes back that far. So mostly though, when you're talking about that, you're obviously talking about the patronage system. We still have a version of that. All of these models still exist on some level, but we've kind of evolved past these things. So historically, we were thinking more museums and more patronage systems. I would make the argument that most people who are not artists and do not know artists, when they think of art, that's usually their first thought, which is not a bad thing. It's just a very specific and academic way of looking at it. To me, the most formative and interesting part of the way art has developed is the salons, which started all the way back in like as early as the 14th century, and it was the first time you really saw benefactors and the royalty and the church and everyday craftsmen and people all meeting together, and the intellectuals, and actually talking about things. So I think that that is interesting because it talks about the public sphere and what we all get to have agency in. It's the first real time that all of us had, if not equal voices, because money always wins, but we all had an access, like not everyone, but there was access, there was a potential for access to everyone. And I think that that existed for a long time, but in the Victorian age especially, you had the development of galleries and art dealers. Does anyone know when the art world really, really became what it is now, starting with kind of the commercial galleries and provenance? Anyone? The Impressionist period, kind of. There were art dealers, but they mostly, like when you look at the Coen sisters and stuff like that, you're talking more about, it's still dealing with collectors, it's not dealing with art as a commodified good. The one where we started truly commodifying art was the big galleries with like, has anybody read 9th Street Women? So, did you like it? It's my mom liked it a lot. During that period, you had these big galleries who started taking agency of the artist on a next level, where they would give them not only input and feedback and critique on their current work, but they also would drive kind of their ideas and what their thinking was and what the next thing might be. Through that, slowly and slowly and slowly, that was happening. And at the same time, we had mass commodification of prints, of everyday wall hangings, of ways that, if I'm getting too much in the weeds, please stop. But we mass commodified things, culminating in the 1980s when greed is good, which you might think greed is good and that is fine, but it did lead to this thing where anything that was considered high art became exclusive. And then you really, if you think back on it, you'll start to see dichotomies of who has art in their house. Like, if you think of your parents or your grandparents, all of them had art in their house. My grandmother, great-grandmother, commissioned paintings to go over her piano in the 1930s and 40s. And when my family came over from Austria, they brought handmade glass ornaments and things like that. And so I would call them everyday collectors. But once you had a better price point, even though it was not necessarily a better quality, you start seeing that competing interest there. So that kind of, I'm going to go to the next slide. It fragments the art world into, I call it the home goods versus the art galleries. And I think we can all think of this. I am not, who's been to a home goods? Yeah, who loves home goods? I do. I find the weirdest stuff there. I have a buddy, home goods? Oh, it's a home goods store, and they just, it's like TJ Maxx, but just for stuff, like just for home, just for stuff for your house.
It's all connected.
So, I have a rabbit, it's a gold rabbit, and he has a human body and a rabbit head. It's the creepiest thing I've ever seen. Love it, in love with it. You're welcome, garden. So, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if you can walk into a home goods, and you don't have any background in art, and you just know what you like, and you don't know what quality is, and even though you might have a cousin who is an artist, but you've never been to one of their openings because you only know them as like Day from around the corner who used to stick nuts up his nose, then you're not going to view his art in the same way because you don't see that aspect of him. You can walk into a home goods, they have lots of nice decorative goods, they might not be fine art, but they hold a place in a home to make a home feel comfortable. I'm of the belief that making beautiful homes and things like that is not just a human instinct, but an animal instinct. I have a buddy, he is 11, he is very cute, and once he stole my earrings for a year at a time and put it in a pile of his stuff that included a beautiful ribbon, a pair of earrings, and a Metro card. And those were his, and I had to fight him to get them back. But whenever we would go on vacation, he would always pull all the things he found out, put them in a pile, and then throw away the stuff he didn't want. So I am of the belief that everybody wants beautiful things that have personal meaning to them. So you have these two things, and then at the same time, when most people walk into a gallery, you are all artists. You know how to walk into a gallery. What do you think most people think when they walk into a gallery? Overwhelmed. Does anybody greet them?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. That can be profoundly alienating. So if you're in a situation where you're overwhelmed and no one is making you feel like you can ask questions, are they going to ask questions? No. So then you have this experience where people do not feel like they can learn about it. One of the most exciting things about my spaces is when you walk in, we have everything salon style, and we have Joanne, you can co-sign me or tell me if I'm wrong, we have a myriad of things. We show fine art, we show handmade jewelry, we show oil paintings, we show encaustic and watercolors, abstract, sculpture, everything you can imagine. And then we let people grab a snack, grab a cup of coffee, and we just have a chat with them. And what's amazing about that is that they then have this experience where they know this is for them. They feel, at the first they feel welcome. Like when we first opened, there was a man who took candy and hid it in his pocket because he thought that it was just out and he wasn't allowed to have it, and I left. And he said, oh, I thought I was stealing this. I was like, sir, these snacks are out in public. They're for you. You couldn't possibly steal them, they're for you. And it was just that he had never been in a space like ours before. And it's like a very charming thing to experience. So, because people don't have that welcoming experience, they're afraid to ask the questions. Which means that you, as the artists, are going into a business where it's really hard to keep a space open because there are the model is limiting the number of people who can show. Now, there's fill gaps about that where, we'll talk about the different models in a second, where you have, you guys, a vibrant art guild, or you have community art centers, or you have libraries that do shows, and different state grants and things like that, that really bolster the art world. But for the everyday person, they may or may not know about that. So what you have happening is you have an increasing size of an audience to buy your work. And there have never been more artists. So the current state, like I was saying, and I believe you said, there's not enough spaces, and it's there's some commercial galleries and there's some art centers, and then I believe you said the market was oversaturated. Because there have never been more artists. There's never been more ways to know how to make art, which is a good thing. It's a very freeing that we can all be in conversation about this. But on the other hand, it means that we have less spaces and more people because commodification has made it much harder to sell art. Budget cuts have removed a lot of public spaces that are funded because they're all relying on the same donors if they're a nonprofit and things like that. We all know Amazon and Etsy exist, and it has made it astronomically expensive to have a brick and mortar place. And we all know real estate is very expensive right now. And so that combined with what I put here, the failure of the supply chains, has made it very hard for all of you to go and find, like, means that when I bring in a show, I might get 100 to 130 submissions. Realistically, I've taken up to 55 people. I should really only be showing 30. But that is because my space is, it's small, but we use the space well, I think. And so, but we know that there just aren't that many spaces. So, and I have to say, of the 130 submissions that we got for our most popular show last year, Materials Matter, I could have shown probably 110 of them. So what do I do when I'm going to tell 2/3 of those people no? And it's not because their work, it's not because I looked at it and I said, this is crap. It's very rare. So it means that, like, there has to be something that, like, one, that you understand that like, it's not a personal thing usually. Almost always it's about one decision, and then it's also about putting your best foot forward. So the next couple slides, we're going to talk about, kind of deal with that. It's going to deal with the models and why you should show in every different kind of model that you see. It's going to deal with art as a business and submission as a practice, because most of us are all very good about getting in the studio or a workspace and getting things done. We're not as good about making sure that we have a tracking system in place and that we are going and taking the time to preview all of the materials that we're going to put in. And so we do a lot of things on the fly. And that's fine. But when you're in competition with so many different people, you have to keep your sanity somehow. And so I find that one of the best things to do is to have a series of best practices that you do over and over and over again. So that's one of the things we'll go over in the second section. And then the last section will be about how you network. And in that we'll talk about social media and what I think the actual function of social media realistically is. Does everybody have any questions so far? Am I talking too fast? All right, I'm checking my time. Okay, so the good news is there have never been more ways to share your art. Keyword here is you have agency. When you go into some galleries and some spaces, you're not going to feel like you have agency because it's either confusing. I feel like most galleries are good, but occasionally you will have a space where it feels like a fly-by-night operation where you're just dropping your art and they're like, okay, see you. And so that doesn't have to be the common practice because you have agency to kind of control what's going on there. And I feel like I want artists to know that because being a creative is hard. It's filled with rejection and it's filled with situations that are overwhelming. Or maybe I'm just projecting, but the good news is you have agency. But part of agency is knowing what you can do to make yourself feel more grounded. So, we have some of the models here. I'll just run through them really quickly. You have traditional galleries. If you can get into a traditional gallery, great. They usually have money behind them. They usually have a list of collectors. They usually have very nice openings where they pour you Prosecco, and I am on board for that. The second place that I point out that not everybody thinks of, but it seems so funny, all of us as artists go to frame shops. But when you go to the frame shop, almost all of them have art in there. Don't be afraid to ask them how they decide and take work. If you're already getting your stuff framed there, that might be an opening. Design stores. We have 2 design stores in Collingswood where I'm located, and I work with one of the designers. When he has a client that's interested, he sends them in, and if we ever wanted to do a cross collaboration, we could do that. So design stores are also a thing. Getting in with designers, if you can, Yes.
Is that an architectural design store you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about home decor.
Indoor.
Yeah, interior design.
Interior
Yeah,
design, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have-
Although, if you do large-scale public art, an architecture firm is where to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But like my sister works for a real estate development company, and we're trying to get them to start supporting public art.
And her number is?
That's right. I have the monopoly, Robin. I love the color of that. I don't make art, so I could
She's
easily
going to
give her
stand
one.
out.
So, Joanne and I call her Katie. Her name's Mary Kate, but we call her Katie. I love to call her Katie. So, design and decor stores. If you can get in there, like these are all ideas and places that definitely show art. You just have to find the right fit for you. Community art centers and guilds, obviously, you guys already know about that one. Colleges and private schools, you also already know about that one. Then there's another model that's called pay to play, and I kind of use pay to play, membership galleries, and collectives at the same time. Is anyone a member of a membership gallery? Would you like to explain how they work?
They basically have a fee to become a member, and then they tell you they have a directory of all their artists and their art, and they usually tell you can put up to 10 pieces.
Yep.
The one I joined was in California, in Laguna Beach. They do have a brick and mortar location. It was $200.
Yep.
They offered to do artist statements, review, that kind of thing for the $200, which they really didn't deliver on. And
Common theme.
and basically they take a commission if they sell your piece, but they work with a lot of interior designers, and they have a huge mailing list, and basically you pay to get representation.
Yeah, you pay for representation. Usually, you typically have to be juried in, and sometimes by the members, sometimes by the curator. And then what you're really paying for is the network. My mom has been an artist, like I said, for my whole life. She has belonged to 2 different membership galleries, one in Philadelphia called Cerulean and one in New York called Atlantic. And what you're doing there is not just like, it's great because you get a list of network, but also you network with other artists, which is great because you get a directory of them. So cross-germination, very important. Pay to play is similar. Pay to play, usually it's just has anybody ever seen a pop-up where you rent space in like New York or Philadelphia? That's where I most commonly see it. And all it is it can either be a juried show, or it can be they throw out the call, everybody puts a certain amount in, and they rent a space for X amount of days. Here's the thing about pay to play. I think that it gets a bad rap. And some of them suck. I'm not gonna lie, some of them suck. But you never know where a person is going to discover your work. And so I don't want to be dim on it, but at the same time, buyer beware. So pay to play and pop-ups are kind of the same. Pop-ups, does anybody know somebody who owns a space, but there's no one who owns a studio, a business, an office, a really nice living room that has ample parking in their driveway or something? Anyone? You can always do your own art show there. No one? That's what they do in the Chester. Has anybody heard of the Chester County Open Studio Store? That's essentially what they're doing, is that anyone can do that. So basically I'm trying to tell you, think outside the box. Like, so art shows is obvious. You guys have a great juried show. You have a great juried show that's coming up. Apply to those. And then there's one last thing that I'm going to point out, that these are all regional to where I am right now, and they're kind of new models. Yes?
Art agents not a thing anymore?
Are what?
Art agents not a thing anymore.
They are a thing.
I worked with one.
Consultants?
If you can get access to an art agent, terrific. But increasingly, there are more artists than art agents. And a lot of things that, did I say consultants? There are more art agents than, like, opposite. There are more artists than the art agents can handle. And so, You have to be careful with that because if you're signing you obviously know someone, but if you are a new artist and you're signing a contract with someone, just make sure, like, just research them. Google is your best friend, guys. But art agents are still a thing, but they are much less common. My dad, she's back there. My mom has worked with art agents in the past, but the thing is that a lot of the responsibility, just like most things with their lives, has fallen onto the artist now and not onto the agent. And so they still exist. I think they're a little harder to find than, I'm trying to talk about things that you have agency in. So if you meet an art agent and they ask to see your stuff, absolutely, that would be amazing. If you could find someone like in a Hallmark movie where you meet them, or they see you painting a painting and
I have to have all your.
I have to have all of your work. I have a giant gallery and I know I have a million connections and because that's not the reality. But like I had a 15-year-old aspiring artist in my gallery the other day, and also another woman who's a buyer who has two brothers who are artists. And she said, "Do you think I'll be able to make it on just selling my paintings?" And I was like, Bianca, you're adorable, but
Not today.
not at the start, at the very least.
But our agents, is an agent really expensive though, or is it just
Depends on
commission?
the agent, because here's the thing, just like consultants, what they have agency on and what they consult on, like, because art consultant's also a thing, can vary wildly because it's just a generic term, but that's a great question. But if you know an agent, it's working. Well, that's the thing, is that,
Years ago.
do you know what's so funny is when you said art agent, I was like, that's right. There are art agents, but I think they've kind of been more replaced with this nebulous idea of art dealers and auctions and galleries and things, like auctions and provenance. So, but I don't really know any mid-level art agents that are around anymore. But that being said, if you know one and they're good at getting you stuff. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I just wondered if they were saying.
Just like I would love if I had a band who was just like, Caroline, show up here and get paid for showing your mug. The market is very, like, talent agents are going, the everyday talent agent is going out of business because there's just not, the market is saturated. Yeah, there's YouTube, there's social media, and things like that, so.
I mean, self-driven.
Self-driven. A lot of the responsibility is just, whether we like it or not, has gone to us.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about really quickly 4 models that exist near me. Has anyone heard of Dirty Franks?
No.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jean, tell us about it. What is it?
Amazing.
Amazing. Why?
It is a down and dirty, well, I did it.
Did you remember it when it was like, it was a real dive bar?
Oh, dive.
Oh, 100%.
Below dive.
Below dive, it was when I worked for the Big Loss Company, we would point it out, and people would be like, is that any good? And we'd be like, no, you should still go there.
Yeah, and the bathrooms were disgusting. But we showed art, a friend of mine and I showed art there. And
Yeah.
it was an experience.
They
They sell a lot of art.
Really? So,
How
yeah.
interesting.
And
And
that,
is it still diving?
Yeah.
Or what's
Why?
going on?
no, okay, so it's more like, I would describe it as more of a hipstery dive bar now. It feels like a dive bar, but it's not a dive bar.
Why do you think it's so-
Jody, whose last name is escaping me, runs the space. She curates shows. They bring in a body of work. They hang it at the booths. People sit there, they eat, they get drunk, they fall in love with your piece, they buy it.
Take it off the wall.
They take it off the wall. And you know what? That's a legitimate business, and I dare anyone to challenge me that that does not work. Because it does, they sell. And so that is a model that if you want to research Dirty Franks, very affordable. I believe they only charge a hanging fee. I don't think they take a commission. They do flat hanging fee per piece. And if it sells, you get the full price of the piece. Lair Gallery is what I'm going to talk about next. Lair Gallery is a brand new space that's about 2 miles from where I'm located. I'm putting them on the list because what they actually are is an event space. They are working with caterers, and this model, I'm not sure if it's working. I've heard mixed things. They have an idea that if they bring in art, and they bring in caterers, and they bring in good music and beautiful lighting, will show up. People will show up, and you can host parties there. If you build it, they will come. And I have to say that even though the model is really developing, I know 2 artists who have sold several pieces there when they were hosting a secondary event. So I think that that's kind of an interesting model. And then the 2 that I listed at the bottom, Soho House and Camden Fireworks, I'm sure you guys have something comparable here. I actually think that there's one. Wait till I describe it. I'm pretty sure that there's one on this campus where it is a studio building that then has a gallery on the first floor. So that people can engage with that. If you, I heard talking about it, and I heard my mom looked at some studios when she was here. That is a model that works really well. If any of you have heard of the Mana Contemporary, that is one of the things that they do there. And so it's kind of an interesting thing where they can balance both having artist space and then having days of open studios and even galleries when they can get somebody to attend it. I'm going to talk a little bit about me. Our gambit is that if you run a store, a gallery, more like a retail boutique where you bring in a collection we do every 8 weeks, and you sell as much artwork as possible, and you engage with the buyer like at a regular store where they're getting educated on the product, and they are looking to fall in love with that perfect dress, but in this case it's a collage. We are trying to educate the populace and make them feel excited about getting work in their hands and feeling like we specialize in works that are under 45 inches. We have furniture in our space so people can see what it looks like in a space. We only do salon style. Does anybody know why we might do that?
What is that?
Salon style is you have a wall downstairs where you have multiple paintings by multiple artists. Does anybody know why we do that? Go ahead.
Because it's more feeling and pleasing to the person coming in, does not make them feel intimidated. They can sit there and take their time and look at the art, appreciate the art, and make sure that they go within their own space, and they had to take it to a school or be able to transport it.
100%. It shows them a lot of different options very quickly. They can take time, absorb it. You absorb it first as a giant constellation, then you look at each of the stars. That is reason 1. Reason 2 is how many people just have one piece of art and then one piece of art and then one piece of art and then one piece of art and just one piece of art everywhere in their home?
No.
How many people have them in combination? I find that's more typical. On Sunday we had a couple come in and they bought 3 paintings that they are going to go and put in a grouping in their house. A lot of people do this thing where they look for one large piece, but guess what? 3 small pieces works just as well. So for us, it's both of those things. It's that there's something visually appealing and energetic about that, but there's also something that tells you this is how it looks in your home. If you buy a piece from us, we take it off the wall, we take it with you, we go to our storage shelf, we put another piece in the place, because we are unabashedly about sales. Sales first, nothing else. Our theory of the case is that people can buy it, they will buy it, and every person that buys a piece is rebuilding that market. I also say you have to be somewhat of an activist to even get into brick and mortar at this point. And so all of us who are opening galleries at this point, and you touched on this, are looking at a new model versus the old model, because we're all trying to build something that was very vibrant before, and the art community is still just as vibrant. The buying community is what is not as vibrant, because art, when you had these things happen, became kind of inward facing. What I always said about when we opened the space, my mom and I would argue about it. She'd say, well, we can make a print studio in here, and we can bring in all these artists. And I said, I want to bring in artists we looked at the Bach Building in Philadelphia. I want to bring in artists, but more than that, I want to bring in regular people to talk to artists. And so our theory of the case is that if you make people feel passionate and included,
You convince them that.
you convince them that you can rebuild the market. So these are the models that I know of. Art Agent is a great addition to that. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of the know your component slides. I'm just going to talk about submissions. So now that we've talked about the different models of everywhere you should show, they're all going to have different ways of doing that. Most common, open submissions. Sure, we all know a guy who we can go to and they will put our artwork up on the wall and we can say, hey Kevin, I really like showing here. You want to show some more of my pieces next week? I sold 2 of them. And Kevin would be like, that sounds terrific. I don't know why all my protagonists are male. I'm sorry. All of us know that person. But there's also, and this is the part that I find really interesting, there are a lot of galleries that just take open submissions. They do call for artists, and the reason that I like those is because you are cross-germinating, just like you're doing right now, with other artists. This becomes your network. This becomes your home. This becomes the people who you're going to poach all of your ideas for selling your artwork off of. So if you see somebody go and do a pop-up thing in their garage and it's well attended, you're going to go, great, I'm going to do the same thing. And you can come together as a group so that anyone who's a fan of you can find new fans. But the most common way to have somebody kind of represent and share things is through submissions. For jurying, somebody tell me what you think about tell me something about the jurying process. Anyone want to be brave?
It's okay.
It's okay. Go ahead, Don.
Jurors have a personality, and 2 jurors won't vote for the same
You don't
thing.
enter for the juror.
It's a crapshoot.
It's what? It's a crapshoot. I love all of these answers. It's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
2 jurors won't pick the same thing.
No.
Right. And you don't, it's very opaque. So the only thing I can do is tell you about what I know, and I think there's a slide on this later, but it's what I know. So we're very lucky. We've been in our space for 2 years. We're conveniently located to Philadelphia. We're a restaurant town. We get a good number of artists submitting to us. Also, my mom's been working in Philly forever, and we poached all our friends. We started with an invitational, and then we were like, hey, do all of your friends want to apply? Which is a legitimate thing to do. So, what we ended up doing is open submissions. All you're doing with the watermark is saying, hey, I don't think you need to see this part of my piece. And also, could you remember my name? So, no watermarks, no in situ. Who knows what I mean by that?
Where it sits above the couch.
Where it sits above the couch. So, make it just the image. If they ask for framing detail, square it right to the frame. No obstructions, like the feet. And again, no hands and feet. I've seen a lot of hands and feet. I've also seen a lot of pictures of...
They're holding it out.
Yeah, like the... I'm just going to show you something. So these are, heck yeah! This is acceptable because since she can't crop to this directly because it's intricate, all of these are squared. If you're doing a sculpture, any sculptors here? To use as many as you need to get the entirety. We have an artist who just made an octopus in a cube. So he says 5 views. So get as many views as you need to go and convey what it looks like in real life. Here are some of my favorite pictures that have been submitted to us. This guy just went ahead and screenshotted from his social media. It was for a jury show. It was supposed to be anonymous. So these are some of our greatest hits. My mom was much nicer in her boot camp. She made all of the photos herself so that she was like, I don't want to offend anyone. I was like, you send me these pictures. You go on wall shame. Okay, so the last one I'm just going to let you guys read through on your own description of images. Make sure you're complete and concise. So if I ask you for the medium of your piece, I don't want you to just write oil. Oil what? Oil on what? what is the piece. So make sure you're being complete, because that is the best way, besides your artist statement, besides the visual. What we're trying to do is create, it's like going on a job interview. The only thing I have to go with is what you give me. So you want me to view you as full of a human as possible. So make sure that you are being detailed so I know what I'm looking for. Okay, so this is just a list of habits that will help for submissions. Does anybody here like submissions?
No.
Does anybody have a common practice that they use?
I sort through images, well, I do photography, so
You do? So, yeah.
it's a little easier, but I'll sort through and I slowly do a process of elimination.
Which is a great way to do it.
And what fits, because a lot of times my jury shows are, you know, her title.
Oh yeah, they usually have a theme of some sort.
A theme,
Ours
not-
doesn't have a theme, but we're weird in a lot of ways. Like Joanne pointed out to me that there's going to be a slide later that is contrary to how I behave in things.
Well, usually most of the things can fit, it's because it's very, you know.
It's very generic, yeah.
String could be a lot of things that you could say yes, but, you know.
It can be a lot of
Weed
things.
through it.
Reading through, do you do that before you do the submission or during the submission?
Before, way before.
Before.
I'll
Do
do
it
it
before.
I usually do it a week, or I've gotten better. I was a procrastinator for years. And now I'll do it 2 weeks before and start to put it into a folder.
Yeah.
Then I'll go back, like you said.
Mia, you are giving me the list right now, which is perfect.
But I had a question with photography.
Yes.
When you print it, do I need to state what paper it's printed on, or is that?
So
Depending
I
on-
personally have a preference for that because there's a huge difference between when you're printing. We have a photo montage artist who prints almost exclusively on like an 80-pound Hahnemuller
Yeah, I don't do it
fiber
like that, but I
piece.
might print on canvas versus.
100%.
So if
Yes.
I do that.
Because
then I
the
know.
texture of the object
Yeah.
you're putting it on will be. So
Yeah.
yes, I would.
Yeah.
So, before you do the process, I always suggest going and trolling on the website and putting in just dummy information. I just fill in test on everything, seeing what they're going to ask me for, and going through it to see what kinds of things they're asking for. Then I always keep a calendar of due dates and a notepad, and then I go through and kind of put those together. So that way I'm tracking everything, I know what I'm going to need, and I can treat this like a business. We all take our art very seriously, and then, not any of you, of course, treat the submissions as, I got 10 minutes, I got to get this in. And so I think you would save yourself a lot of stress if you did some front-end research. There are some type A's out here, I can tell, that already do that, but it's there for a reason. I always tell people make a tracking sheet. Know when it's one thing to know what you submitted and when the dates of the show are. Put it out for the full cycle, because one of the most annoying things you encounter as a gallerist and a curator is somebody getting in touch with you and saying, oh hey, can I take this piece early because I accidentally submitted for another show? If somebody comes down with me, this is where I'm, excuse my language, a bitch. You're like, absolutely not. And if you do take it, I won't be showing you again. And that's not because I'm mean. I think I'm pretty nice.
You made a commitment.
You made a commitment. So that all becomes easier if you make sure you have a tracking sheet and have folders for each one of your submissions. One of the best ways to get to know if a gallery is for you, visit the space. My space is kind of far for some of you. Luckily, Joanne has a pied-à-terre and she comes to see me from Philly all the time. And so she was able to visit our space, and we had a great conversation, and we found out we would probably be a good fit. For some of you, you're thinking, Collinswood, New Jersey, I don't even know where that is. And that's fair. But there has to be a level of, is this gallery worth my time? And some of you are probably listening to me and being like, this lady is nuts. And it's true, I am. And so then we probably wouldn't be a good fit. But if time allows, nothing is going to replace you seeing what they actually do in real life. So if you have that privilege, go for it. And then, a lot of times artists think that I'm going to think they're stupid if they ask me a question. No, I love questions. And anybody who makes you feel stupid when you ask a question about your work, about your agency, you should question them about why you wanting to know and feel comfortable made them so uncomfortable. So, always ask questions if you're unclear. So the don'ts are very obvious. They're basically about doing things on the fly. Don't write a written component right in the text box. So don't just think, oh, I can write an artist statement right in the box. No, have a file, have one ready. Take photos on the fly, upload directly from your phone, because naming, this is the most underrated thing. If you can do your work on sorry, I'm probably going over time. If you can do your work on a computer, save files correctly in the naming convention that they ask, chef's kiss. There's nothing better, because I can take that, put it in my stuff, it makes it easy peasy. I know that I can see it from some of the looks. People are like, how do I do that? It's a whole other course. But it's not a requirement, but it is nice. Don't leave anything, any items incomplete. But if you're not sure of something and it's an optional text, don't feel the need to include something that you. I'm trying to think of a good. Okay, so we asked for if something's framed and for the framing dimension. I'm going to take that information, if you accept it, put it onto your consignment agreement, and I'm going to, when I check in the piece, measure the piece. If it's unframed, put that it's unframed. Don't guess on it, because then we're just going to spend time measuring and like redoing that. And
How specific though? 29 and 20.
Okay, so I do 0.25s.
No, I'm asking that question.
Yeah, so
I want to measure dimensions, but I don't think that's going to affect the gallery usually.
So it's more about what is, so one of the things we all have to be conscious of, the website and the social media and stuff are really a thing. And so the more specific you can be with the correct information,
you
the
can
better.
post correctly.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is if you don't know the size, don't say you know the size. If you don't know the size of your own piece, you gotta go back and do some work. But if you don't know the size of the framing, it's not a big deal. And I always say, make sure that you, it's always better we get horror stories about people who are like, my thing timed out. A good way to prepare yourself for the form timing out is making sure that you already have everything saved and you can just copy and paste. All right, I was asked to talk about this one specifically. How many people feel great about how they price their artwork?
Better.
You feel better? The thing is I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think anybody knows how to price artwork. The market, just like the housing market, is not stable enough. There are lots of different prices. A good resource is to go on somewhere like In Liquid, where you see a lot of artists all at once, see what they're kind of pricing at. But pricing is very nuanced. So what I usually recommend to people, because it is stressful, is always make sure you're getting reimbursed for your cost. I had a lady come in yesterday who clearly spent over $70 to frame and mat her piece. She was charging $70 for that piece. And then she told me, and if I sell it, I'm going to donate it to the gallery. And I was like, no, ma'am, please don't do that. So make sure you're being reimbursed for, at the very least, your materials, your time, and any fees you spent on it. The second really important thing is know that you are unlikely to be reimbursed for your time. It's just not possible. I had a woman I've known her my whole life. She taught with my dad. She came in. I thought it was a typo. She had listed her piece for $15,000. She had never shown with another gallery. She did not have any social media, no website. And she said, well, these other artists are just cranking work out. And this took me months. And this is just like me charging a reasonable wage per hour.
Minimum wage.
And I was like, Mary, that's fine if you don't want to sell this. But there are, well, like you guys, of course this is funny to us because
we get pieces like that downstairs.
Yes, and the thing is that is fine if you don't want to sell that piece. We had an artist who was in our very first George show. She did beautiful portraits of her children, large-scale portraits. You would look at them and you would go, I need to get this. She priced them high. She didn't want them to sell. She was trying to get her work out there. That is a gamble. You can do that. But if you are charging this because you're like, well, I spent 7 months of my time on this, and $15,000 is how much I would get paid if I were teaching for the same time period, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. So, build that into the equation. I'm not saying that never happens. I'm saying it's rare. Be consistent. Speak with galleries when you go in. When somebody comes in to see me and they ask me about prices, I tell them what my average sale price is, what the highest price I've done, the lowest price I've done, and what the meat and the meat of it is. That is a really important thing because then you kind of know where you sit in the market. It's really really good to know what the finances of your audience are. And the best way to do that is ask questions. And then from there, experiment with prices. If you price something at $125 and you have 2 pieces in a show and they both sell for that price, and then you have them in another show and you raise it to $135 and that sells, you know that you're pricing a little low. You will get to a certain point where that will remain more static. That is usually probably around where the price point should be. If you're finding that you have these pieces that were selling really well and that price doesn't move at that price, then you know that you have to move it back down. It's very much whatever the market will bear.
And who you're showing to.
And who you're showing to. But you have to be consistent because, which sounds counterintuitive, because every gallery has different, regionally they tend to be the same. But you have to be consistent, but at the same time be mindful that it is really whatever the market will bear. My mom and I get in arguments because she sold some small, beautiful oil paintings for $300 a piece, and she sold 2 of them. And then she has these larger pieces that are more abstracted that are also priced for $300.
And they won't sell.
No, they do sell.
They do sell.
But the thing is that that's a real inconsistency in her pricing. Because she's charging the same price for 2 very different pieces. And in fact, don't tell on me. Because she and I have gotten multiple fights about it.
But the also thing is sizing people.
It's because the other ones are small.
And you can fit them somewhere.
You sell art by the square inch?
Some people do that. If that is a philosophy that works for you. But I can't be showing 2 pieces from the same series, one that's a portrait and then an abstracted art that's related to that. Because my mom's an installation artist, I should have led with that. I can't sell both of those pieces within the same room for the same price. The buyer's going to look at that and go, why? Yeah, exactly, why? So do some research. Know that anybody who tells you for sure this is worth this price.
When I was starting out, that's what I did, linear inches.
Yeah.
And so I would have a rate, and I would say, say $5 per linear inch.
Yeah.
And that way, if I had a 20 by 20 versus a 36 by 36, it was an easy way to calculate the price
100%.
between the 2
I
sizes.
did that when I was painting murals.
But I did that when I was starting out.
Well, she did that when she was starting out because she's using similar materials, similar body of work.
Everything's similar.
It's relative. If you're doing,
You're putting in the same amount of work.
Yeah,
in terms
it
of-
was just to keep it consistent at the beginning before I knew anything about art.
yeah,
A lot of
and
artists do that.
a lot of artists are moving to that. We have 2 artists who show with us, actually 3, one who I saw today. Helen Harris, who does abstracted work. Michelle Collins, who does these beautiful paintings on storybook pages. And then a random man who gave us, his name is Tom, and he, for our Papers Work show, gave us 4 paper airplanes that were oil paintings on panel. When we saw them come through, we were like, did he not get the theme of the show? And then we opened them and we were like, Tom Murray, you goddamn genius. But he prices by the inch. But it works for him because he's using the same materiality over and over and over again. And that's what he's comfortable with. I guess what I'm saying is find a point to start at that you're comfortable with and then move from there. Anyone have any questions? I'm really sorry, I'm going to blow through these slides. Okay, I was also specifically asked to talk about this. Social media. The last ones that are being a good citizen, you guys can just read on your own. Tell me what social media is for. Anyone?
Connecting
Connecting with who?
with other artists, with the art community, with galleries, interior designers,
find people who don't
friends
know.
who might don't know where they can find your art.
100%. That is a very, well, you have a good social media page, so I'm not surprised by this. That is a very, very clear-eyed view of what social media can do for you. Social media, my site is linked to my store. Anyone can click on an image at any time, see it in the store, buy it. That happening, you are the exception that proves the rule. That happening is very rare. But it is a thing. Primarily, my view on social media is it's cross-germination. You are looking to create a community where you are constantly getting to know each other, learning about each other's ideas, learning about each other's buyers, learning about each other's shows, and that is the networking function. There's a secondary function that is for your current and future buyers. Social media can feel very alienating because you are basically speaking into a void. But what's amazing about it is, if you do videos of yourself, if you do show people the progress of a piece, if you go and take pictures at the opening, tag other artists you're with, you tag the gallery for sure. If you do that, what you are doing is you are introducing yourself to people kind of as a brand, but in a very organic way where they're going to attach to you. One of the most satisfying things that ever happened to me was there was a guy who was the first person who came in 2 months after we opened who had not met any of the artists we showed. And I said, well, how did you find us? And he said, oh, I'm a huge fan of your Instagram. I said, really? You like the pictures? He was like, no, I like the videos because I feel like I'm really getting to know the artist. And then I Google them and I go to their websites and they feel like they're getting to know you. My argument is people will buy your work if they feel like they understand the work. And part of that for artists, whether we like it or not, people think I'm an extrovert because I stand up here and I talk. I'm not actually an extrovert. I just really find people fascinating. And so the bridge that I cross is, if I'm engaging with people, people are interesting, and I can cross that for you guys. It's hard for artists to get out there because we spend so much time in our minds and being intuitive and thinking about concepts. And one of the weird things that happens is I have taken technique lessons for so long on my voice, I don't even think about it anymore. You guys are all the same with your medium. When I'm singing, I'm not thinking about that because it is natural to me, it is intuitive, but it is based on a very real skill that you learned that is natural and obvious to you, but it's not natural and obvious to the people viewing your work. And because it comes from you as a person, one, we don't see it as rare, we see it as just something we do, and two, it can be uncomfortable to share something that is an intimate process for you. But the beauty of art is a lot of it is about the other person imprinting on your work. And so, and I can say this as a person who's a non-artist who constantly imprints on other people's work because there is something fascinating about the humanity and idea I see in that work. And part of that is I get to know the stories. I make almost every artist, even if they don't record an artist talk, I make all of them tell me about what their work is. And then I am going to take that and convey it to people who are interested in the piece. We did Art Fair 14C, which is in Jersey City, and the best compliment that somebody wrote on our page was, this gallery tells the story of their artists beautifully. Why is that important? It makes it, I don't know who said it, but it makes it, it was you? Oh, cute right here. It makes it relatable. It makes it so that they feel like they're getting to know you. And your art is inextricably tied for you, tied to you. Whether you feel like, people see my mom, she dresses in all black, she's very tiny, she looks like a little owl, very cute. And they look at her and they think she's a writer. And you would see her work and it's nuts. She paints on windows, she paints on blankets, she puts ephemera on it. But when you look at her work, it looks like her brain. And as you get to know her, you learn that about her. And the thing is that those two things are inextricably tied. But for some people, they need you to make that line between. So if you want somebody to become your super fan, it is uncomfortable, but figure out ways to give them content that will be meaningful for them. We'll also tell you there's a way to juice the system. If you want to get more followers, which is you post a picture, you post a video, you post a reel / story, you hit all of them all within one day. Because you've reached a certain volume, it will go out to more people. My intern, everybody should get like a 22-year-old intern, fabulous. She told me, she said, Caroline, you use the same hashtags all the time. It's filtering some of them out because the algorithm thinks they're all the same content. So then she taught me how to randomize my hashtags. Randomize your hashtags, have a series of mix and match ones that you do.
Give us an example.
Okay, so I'm a bad example because you can see them on my page.
Okay.
But we always do, at the very least, art for everyone because that's our tag. Paladin Arts because that's who we are. We do art for sale, Collingswood, handmade for you. We do all of these different things that she got us into doing, art of the day, all the things.
So you mix them up, or
you mix them up. So you can do up to 30 tags. You can do
all the same, one after another.
Yes. You can do up to 20 tags of people, like the @ symbol on Instagram. And I would say, of the two, if you have to choose one or the other, I like people being on both because you can just feed your Instagram into your Facebook. For an artist, Instagram's the way to go.
Okay, so got it.
So make sure you're using those things. There is a Zoomer on YouTube or TikTok somewhere that's going to give you a great summary, better than me, a geriatric millennial who did not get, probably most people in this room, I did not get social media till I was 27, and I was like, what is this thing? So look up the videos, but make sure cross-germinate, cross-germinate, cross-germinate. Tag anyone in the photo, tag the gallery, tag the space, tag the location, tag the town. I don't care what you do.
Tag the guild, please.
Tag the guild. So, I can't tell you if that will get you sales. That's right, PAAG, tag. That's how I'm going to say it. I can't tell you that your work will sell online. Some people have great success with Saatchi art in particular. Some people have great success with Artsy, Etsy, any one of those. Most artists are not selling there. Yes? Cafe is really good for finding opportunities. I have less experience with how they sell. I will tell you this, most galleries...
It's just
Oh yeah.
an application.
Okay, good, because I was like, I've never heard of this.
No, cafe is just
Find out a lot.
Yeah, so
You can put
I will
it
tell
on
you,
your artist.
most galleries are not, cafe is prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
So cafe is great for finding opportunities that are with larger, more, basically organizations that have better funding. A lot of public art is in that, a lot of colleges and all those things. I have a slide on this that has a list for you guys. Oh, it's right here. So, all of these things are going to tell you about openings. Is everybody okay with what I said about social media? Does anybody have questions, concerns? Did I not cover something you're interested in? So, these are when you come into my space, and every region is going to have a version of this. When you come into my space and you say, I just started showing, where else should I be looking? This is the list we write out and give to people all the time. In order to find opportunities, don't just do Facebook. Make sure you're doing websites. We use InLiquid a lot. Has anybody here used InLiquid? They are, you can join InLiquid if you don't have a web page and don't want to do a web page, but you want to have somewhere to show somebody a collection of your work. InLiquid's great. They've been around for a while. They also do group shows for artists in Philadelphia and a lot of pop-up venues and things like that. They also have a space in the Kearney building, which is a big art building in Philly. But they have a very, very, very well-known list of opportunities from everywhere. Some of you guys might be familiar with NIFA. NIFA is in New York. If you Google NIFA and you get the New York Film Academy, that's not the one. NIFA is an art organization, New York Foundation for the Arts. All of these are great places to go and find different places that you're interested in. And more than that, sign up for the newsletters, follow art spaces and groups that you're interested in. Especially, you guys all look like you probably have already started an art practice. But it's nice to refresh it and find other resources. And the best way you're going to do that is start following people. I said that artists don't steal. They have conversations using the same language. They reinvent. And it's just as true for building your network. Okay, so this is the one that Joanne called me on because Joanne was obviously the person I knew here. So, do all of those things where you follow galleries, you follow art organizations. I swear we're almost done. You follow art organizations because it will, at the very least, give you a support system for the very hard process of getting into shows. But don't walk into an art space, see the director of that space, and then pull out your phone to tell them that you are an artist and they should show your work. I'm not saying don't do that, because if somebody walks into my space and comes in and starts asking me questions, we'll get into a natural conversation, and then they mention they're an artist, oftentimes I'll ask them about their art. But we all know a person who did this. They walk into a gallery, they find the most important person they think is in there, they pull out, I'm going to say slides because slides used to be a thing. They pull out their slides and they say, I know you want to show my art. What did I do wrong in that process? Confronting. Do I even know how they accept submissions? When you walk into a gallery, the most important thing for you to ask as an artist is, how do you take submissions? For me, a lot of times the people who are the most aggressive are actually the spouses of the artist, because the artist is like, I don't want to say anything, which is actually great because my dad is that for my mom. He is gregarious and large, and my mom is tiny and shy. It's not that you shouldn't show them your art, but that is not actually essential, because if you tell them you want them to show artwork, you're assuming that that's their process. Make sure that you make it a conversation. I know that not all galleries are like me, where when you come in, I ask you if you want water and snacks and coffee. We were doing delivery appointments on Sunday, and my sister Kate was literally making everyone coffee, including, we have an espresso lattes. And people were like, what is happening here? We have like 5 different kinds of milks. We are very weird. We are as much a social space as we are a gallery. And that's just our thing. But the biggest thing is, you want them to engage with you by having a positive experience. Part of that is not making them feel overwhelmed immediately, because if that happens to a person enough, they shut down. So prepare yourself for that. When you walk in, don't be afraid to engage with the disengaged assistant behind that desk. But at the same time, ask questions, don't assume. Don't send gratuitous or preening emails or make uncomfortably effusive phone calls. Do not tag a gallery with a picture of your work that you are submitting for curating, for jurying, and say, just submitted this to @Paladine-Arts. Don't do that, because you are already associating yourself with a gallery who does not know you. Unless you know you were in that show, do not do that. Tag your friends, tag anyone who was involved in the work, tag yourself, tag old places that you've shown things, all good. Once it's in the show, tag the hell out of me. But if I have not accepted your work, What you are doing is you're setting yourself up for failure. Going along with that is I love phone calls. If you call me, I will answer all of your questions. There's no way to butter me up so that I will automatically say you're in. And the reason I feel that way, and I assume a lot of people do, I'm actually a lot nicer about phone calls, I think, than a lot of people. Because I'm an information giver, I like to answer questions. But if you call up and tell me I'm wonderful and you can't wait to show on my thing, and you start setting the level that I'm automatically going to accept you, it's very uncomfortable for the person answering your questions. And also, it feels like you're trying to butter them up, and no one likes to feel like somebody's trying to con you. So I always say be careful with your phone calls. We all know a friend who has a friend who runs a gallery. If your friend gives you that phone number to text the gallerist on the personal phone, always say, I got a voicemail the other day on my personal phone number from a woman who I have no idea who it is, who told me she was going to be in my next show. Delete, did not listen, because I have a phone at my gallery that receives texts. So the thing is that you want to keep everything direct, polite, and you want it to be an overall positive experience. You have to look at the gallerist even if they are a little bit like, I as a person am like, kind of like a big hug. But some people are not. You have to look at them reflexively like you, but I think in our want to show, sometimes people do weird things. So if your friend gives you their friend, the gallerist's personal number, say to your friend, hey, can you text them and make sure that that is okay? And then have that friend send a text with both of you on it to them. I had somebody text my sister because they couldn't get in touch with me. My sister has an unlisted phone number. I still don't know where they got it from. It can be very off-putting to people around you. So I always tell people, phone call's great, text message is great, professional context only. All right, this I just, I'm talking about crit groups. Join a crit group, join a guild, find people to cuddle you when you get rejected from shows. And then I included this bouncing back, what to do when you're not picked. What to do if there's no response on a decision. So, what happened? Nothing. So, sorry. A lot of galleries, who has applied for a show and then heard nothing? Awful. Don't get it at all. Don't get it at all. If that happens, I say send them a nice email. They may not respond to you, but send them a nice email because they need to look. There are also levels and nuance of rejections. Very uncomfortable moment at Art Fair 14C, the man in the booth next to me came over and called his friends over and said, they have the nicest rejection letter you have ever seen. Because we give you the full data. We say we were looking at this many people, this is how many spaces we had, this is how many we took, here are the ratios of that. We give you like all the inside baseball stats. And then we encourage you to come see the show, which is the next day. Within that is rare. Most people say, thank you for submitting, we're not interested in your work at that time. But sometimes my mom has recently gotten an email that said, we're not interested in your work at this time, but we are interested in your journey. We hope to see more work from you in the future. That tells you apply their next show. If you reach out to the person, they may or may not respond. If you reach out to me to ask why you didn't get into a show, and I say, there's really no reason, your work is great, we just had a lot of selections, and it's a flip of a coin. We're bringing in a juror right now for our show because, to a certain extent, we know that we're all going to have the same 70% of the artists that we're going to go through, but his first decision is going to be different than mine. Somebody said earlier that, I think you said, they all have different opinions. So his first choice will be different than mine. And so it's going to be a whole different show. If you send an email and they say, it could have gotten in, it's just that I prioritize one thing over another. It could be something as simple as, I have too many pieces that have green in it. Your piece was green and I chose these first. That's your answer. If the person says, we have a lot of artists who had obstructions in their photos and did not give us a good idea of artist statement, what is the person actually saying to you?
You need to brush up on your skills, your submission skills.
You need to brush up on those skills. I'm not talking about the group, I'm talking about you, I'm just trying to be polite about it. Then if somebody gives you a response that says there's nothing wrong with your work, go to the opening, see what got picked, talk to anyone you know who got in, and realize that every single show is different. I also always like to say, hug, cry, and cuddle if necessary. Leverage your artist support group, and then get back on the horse. Takeaway. So that's a takeaway. Okay, so that is it. I'm sorry, it was very long. Does anybody have any questions for me? Go ahead.
Would you tell an artist if their work was not good?
So, I actually had the opportunity to do that one time, but before I could even get to that, the artist, gentle is better. What we usually say to people is that we, most often, if it's not a submission issue, it's not usually that we get very few works that we just look at and we go, well, that's crap.
Yeah.
A lot of it is that some things are student level work, some things need a little more time to germinate. So we had an artist who was a recent college graduate. She applied for 2 shows. She didn't know why she was getting in. I invited her to Coffee for Creatives. We talked through her work, and all it was is she didn't have a distinctive style all of her own yet. So there are very few people who, I say this about singing because all of the artists tell me, Mo, you're kind of an artist. You must be somewhat good at art. And I'm like, here's how I know that I'm probably not. I mean, my dad has a painting of a lighthouse that I did in 12th grade, and he loves it. But it's terrible. I used all one side of the brush. But if I were any good at it, I would have pursued it. I know that because I'm a singer, and I pursued that. So it's not usually that people's work is awful. It's usually that people either can't determine when the piece has been successful, which is a maturity thing, or that they're still developing a style. So I will tell them, but I won't be like, hey, I looked at it. There's a cry. So, any other questions? Go ahead.
How do you get people into your place? I mean, I'm sure word of mouth eventually, but where are you pulling these people from?
So we advertise with New Jersey State Council for the Arts. We advertise with Liquid, and we run Facebook and Instagram ads. We might start doing some Google ads, but I've heard mixed reviews about that. Primarily we do word of mouth. I like to feel like we're a gallery for artists, built by artists for artists, which may or may not be true. You might have watched this and been like, what a blowhole, and then I'm probably not the gallery for you. But, which is fine. I can't be if I were a wine, I can't be everyone's vintage. But word of mouth, very important. But we have found it very nice to list with a bunch of different organizations. In fact, for your jury show, if you're looking for people, in Liquid, service is free. You just go into their Airtable, you post the submission, and they'll send it out. And it's in chronological order, so whatever's the next show that has a deadline, put it in. Like, we just started getting submissions for Materials Matter, which is our next show, which is, they're all coming from Liquid. But we get them from doing some cross-advertising on social media, and then from being on listservs. New Jersey has a New Jersey State Council of the Arts. It's called Opportunities for the Field. We work with them. I am positive that Pennsylvania has the same thing. In fact, you guys have much better funding for your art than we have in New Jersey.
And you're successful.
I'm successful?
The business.
So that's a complicated question. Am I turning a profit? No. But that is also because the margins are so slim. All of you are competing with the Thomas Kincaid print gallery. Whether we like it or not, we are.
Home goods.
And so home goods, Home Depot, Amazon.
No, and that's why when you see
And
a
so-
piece that's there for $50, you wonder, how can I price my stuff?
I am very lucky because, like Liam Neeson, I have a certain set of skills, and everyone in my family has a certain set of skills. And so we are able to run on a very lean budget. Do we make sales? Yes. We sold at least 2 paintings every weekend in the first show of our year, which we expected to be the slow show. It opens right after Christmas, and it generally the weather is crappy. So we sell a lot of work. We're close to our margins, but that being said, it's an expensive business. It's expensive for you. It's expensive for us. But I'm very lucky. I have a sister who is a CFO, and she's okay being poor in order to support me. And so we love it and we think it should exist. So my friend who runs the decor store, his husband's a doctor. But you have to a certain extent, know that every show we sell more art. Every show we raise our average sale price. We increased our profits by 2/3 from our first year to our second year. We're already trending higher. I'm sorry. We're already trending higher this year than last. And so for us, that is success. For some people, they would go,
It's a money thing.
it's a money thing, but I'm, as I said, privileged, but I'm 42 and I worked as a consultant in New York, and so I have financial stability that allows me to try this for now. My dad, a Catholic school teacher for 45 years, did not have those same privileges. So I'm in a privileged position, but it's because I really value artists, and so I consider it successful.
You're giving back.
Yeah, and also, like, I would love to make a profit, don't get me wrong, I want that beach house. But there's an element of when we sell a piece, especially if a person tells me it's the first time they're buying a piece, that feels like you're rebuilding the art market and you're reintroducing people to that.
You get people like that come back.
Yes, my parents' contractor came in 2 days ago. He came to an opening, he came in 2 days later, and he said, we had a mosaic rooster. It's called Barnyard Beauty. He just been thinking. He walked in and he goes, I've never bought a piece of art in my life. I can't stop thinking about this. I have 3 minutes. I can't stop thinking about this. And he bought it. Every time we sell something, my sister Sarah says, it's so embarrassing because every time we sell a piece, people think it's the first time because we're so excited. Then this last opening, we sold a bunch of stuff out of the opening, and my sister Sarah got overwhelmed, and she turned over to us and said, I'm sorry, it probably looks like the first time that I've sold a piece of work. And I said, yep, that's the feeling we get. And so there's varying levels to weigh success, but do I find it the best job I've ever had? Yes. Is it killing me?
Yeah, you're happy. Yeah.
Say it again?
You're so happy.
I always look happy as a myth. I'm just kidding. No, I'm generally happy.
No, but it's a fun job.
And how long has it been?
We opened January 8th, 2022. So the peak of Omicron, it went quickly.
Yeah.
And I'll have to say, as somebody who has been in that gallery, if you've never tried to be represented by a gallery, this is the one to try, because they really are the artist representative. They just help you grow as an artist. They do artist talks. So as a means of educating the public, it forces you to learn how to communicate about your art. And believe me, like, lost sleep.
You were so nervous the first time, and she gives great artist talks.
But it really makes you grow as an artist. And they do coffee for creatives once a month, where you can go and meet other artists.
We call it a kind of crit.
Sunday morning.
Yes, and I have cards on the back table, so if you have a question that you don't want to ask in public, please feel free to grab a card. We have a card for coffee for creatives.
Next show.
I like it in the next show.
The next show's there.
But I know that it's kind of a hike for you guys, but if you're interested, it's over there. But we
Great
bring in,
restaurant town.
it is a great restaurant town. So yeah, I'm out of time, guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You are.
To become become a part of our thriving art community, simply reach out to us using the contact information provided below. Whether you're interested in joining as a member, attending one of our events, or volunteering your time and expertise, we welcome artists of all backgrounds and levels of experience to join us on this creative journey. Connect with us today and discover the countless benefits of becoming a member of the Pottstown Area Artists Guild. We look forward to welcoming you into our community and supporting you on your artistic path.